Can you even see it? It's so invisible.
No, sorry.
Hello, my name is Katrina and welcome to my home and welcome to Moonbelly Makes, which is where I share all of the projects that I love to make, from crafting to cooking to baking. Today I'm sharing with you part 2 of how I made a butterfly life cycle quilt for my baby niece Nora. If you want to see all of the things that happened in part 1, you can go check that out because we're just going to dive right in. So here's how I put everything together and completed the quilt. Okay, so almost to the most exciting part, which is going to be stitching everything down onto this backing fabric. I just have a couple little things that I need to do first. I'm going to iron everything again, especially this backing fabric. It just got super wrinkled because my cats have been sleeping on it every day. The other thing that I'm going to do is I've noticed that the egg is a little translucent. You can see the leaf, like the line of the leaf through it, and I don't want that. So I'm gonna make another layer to it so that it's more opaque. The other thing that I need to do is go visit my mom and get some invisible thread from her because I forgot to buy some. She has some for me. I'm just going to not be able to stitch down the caterpillar because of the stripes of the caterpillar. I didn't want to use just black. I didn't want to use just white. I want to use invisible thread. So I will not be able to stitch that down today, but I can get started on everything else. Yay!
I got some placement help from my mom and then began stitching. I started with the stem because the leaves needed to go on top of it, so I loaded up my machine with brown thread and got going with the same stitch I used to sew down the orange pieces on the butterfly in part 1. Once the stem was done, I switched to my new green thread to do the leaves. Last time I was working on this, I really wanted to get all of the leaves done, but then I had like a tension issue and I had to change my bobbin thread, and then I had some issues with how I was stitching it, and I had to take it out and start over, and I literally stopped with it just like in the machine in mid-stitch. But I am ready to get back to work today, and my goal is to get all of the pieces totally appliqued down, so we'll see if I can get that done before the sun goes down. With all 3 leaves done, I stitched down the chrysalis and the egg, changing my thread to match the colors, and then moved on to the butterfly herself, under the watchful supervision of my baby Pete. Now that all the pieces except the caterpillar were stitched down, if you recall, I'm waiting to get some invisible thread from my mom to do the caterpillar, I turned my attention to the embroidered embellishments, starting with the chrysalis. Monarchs are so visually stunning at every stage of life, and instead of a brown chrysalis like many butterflies have, they instead bless us with their green and gold chrysalises. I used this gold trim to embroider a line across the top, which I did by stitching down a crochet-style chain, and then some French knots, which is an embroidery stitch that I always have to look up on YouTube how to do. Then I used my machine to stitch down some black braided trim to be just the hanging little bit. It probably has a real name, but I don't know what it is. And yes, chrysalises is the plural of chrysalis. I looked it up.
So we just got back from Thanksgiving, and my lovely mother gave me a bobbin's worth of, well, like a half a bobbin's worth of invisible thread, and I'm very excited. Let me show it to you. It is so thin. Invisible thread is just really thin, kind of like a fishing wire, but it's much more flexible, like thread. It doesn't have that, I guess, like the hardness or the stiffness that can you even see it? It's so invisible. You can kind of see it, but so it just has like a little bit of shine to it. Obviously you can still kind of see it, especially the way that I'm going to be using it with like a really thick zigzag. But because it is so thin and honestly so incredibly slippery, I'm going to do a little bit of a test first, just to make sure that the tension and the size of the stitch is correct on my machine. And then I'm gonna stitch the caterpillar down.
I had to stop and start a lot to turn the fabric around all the little feet, but eventually the caterpillar was secure.
Hello, good morning. It is a rainy day, very gray, perfect day for sewing. So today I'm going to do two things. I'm going to start with the antenna. So first I am going to do a little bit of a tester for both types of antenna that I'm doing today. So for the caterpillar and for the butterfly, and I'm just going to make sure that they stitch down the way that I think they're going to. And I'm going to try a little bit of a different technique for each one. The caterpillar I plan on stitching straight down the middle with just a straight stitch. And then for the butterfly, I'm going to try couching, which is stitching kind of over it in a big zigzag. So I'm going to try those things. We'll see if that changes as after I do my testers. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to hand stitch down the gold detailing and the chrysalis. When I tried doing it with a machine, it got all bunched up and weird, and it took forever to take out, so I'm just going to do it by hand rather than trying to do it with the machine again, because I know that it will work and I won't run the risk of having to take it out and wasting all that time. So that's the plan for the day. The cats are right behind you. They're watching the rain. It's very cute. Okay, here goes.
The tests went quite well, so I pinned down the antenna with a lot of pins and then carefully attached them using a wide zigzag stitch for both. It just looks like it's floating on top. It still has its dimension, which I think is really cool. Just want to show you the back so you can see the size of the stitch. So it's a pretty big zigzag. For the butterfly, I wanted the antenna to be stitched behind the body. So once they were down, I was able to add the rest of the butterfly, including some French knots for the eyes.
Oh yeah. Oh, so cute. They're like a little lopsided because I didn't measure it and I'm a human being, but I think it kind of adds to it. It's like just subtle. It's not like totally all over the place. Okay, let me show you. Oh, look. Ah, so cute. It's like kind of it's like actually cracking me up.
I used some invisible thread to stitch down the gold trim on the chrysalis, and the top was finally done.
I can't believe our family's getting a new person. I'm so excited. I just can't wait to meet her. I can't wait to give this to her. So the top is done. It's completely done. I can't stop looking at it. Really amazing. I've had this vision in my mind since before even our nephew was born, and he's almost 3. When I was making the solar system quilt for him, I was imagining, if they have another kid, what would I do? So this is an idea that I've had for like 4 years almost, and it's really cool to see it. And it turned out I know it's not totally done, but it's turning out even better than I imagined.
When the top of a quilt is done, there are 3 steps that need to happen to finish the quilt: basting, quilting, and finishing the edges. I'll talk about the other parts when I get to them, but the basting process starts by making the quilt into a sandwich. I pushed my coffee table into the dining room to use the hardwood floor in my living room, and I put the back down first, making sure that it was wrong side up. Then I used masking tape to attach it to the floor, keeping it smooth and secure. Backs of quilts are traditionally just a plain piece of fabric, which is what I'm doing for this quilt, and you can see how I picked it out in part 1. The middle of the sandwich is a fiber product called batting, which I am pinning to the back fabric. Batting is thick and fluffy and can be made of all sorts of different fibers. The one I have here is a cotton polyester blend. Fully natural cotton or wool batting is wonderful since it doesn't have any synthetic material, but those types require a lot more quilting stitching, so I usually go for a blend like this that is a little bit sturdier. Then the top, the pretty part or the front of the quilt, goes on, and I spent a long time making sure that it was incredibly smooth and relatively taut before pinning it down as well. Now that the quilt was a perfect sandwich, it was time to do the actual basting. I threaded a large needle with a very long length of cheap thread. And tied a quilter's knot at the end by crossing, wrapping, sliding, and pulling through. Basting in this context has nothing to do with pouring turkey juices over a roasting bird, but instead means taking large stitches, and I mean really large. For this, I did at least 2 inches each, but some of them are even bigger. These stitches do the same work as pinning, but they're way more secure when working with the thickness of a quilt. Not to mention, maneuvering a quilt full of pins through the machine while quilting it sounds like a really quick way to become a human pin cushion. I love watching the time lapse of this whole part because Pete was so cute following me around. I like to tell myself it's because he felt some intrinsic love for his new quote-unquote cousin and he wanted to be a part of making her gift, but I think the reality is that he was hoping he would have something new and exciting to gnaw on if I turned my back for just a second. Once it was all basted and I had taken all of the pins out, I cut it roughly to shape and pulled all of the tape off. And it was finally time to quilt. Quilting is the word for the verb and the noun for the stitching that is like a toothpick going through the sandwich. It goes through all 3 layers and keeps it all together. Batting packaging will tell you how far apart the stitches need to be minimum, so I made sure to follow what my package said.
Where are you going? What's your plan? This is not a long-term thing that's gonna work for you. I need to move it around and stuff.
I mostly just outlined everything, but quilting is often used as an opportunity to add more decoration, which I did some of here, on the egg especially. I also added veining to the leaves, decor to the chrysalis, and some swirly curvy lines in the open spaces of the background.
So now that the quilting is done, I get to do the edges. I need to finish the whole thing. So that is going to start with just measuring exactly where I'm going to cut. I'm gonna leave an extra 1/2 inch of fabric, more than I want it to be, and it's pretty loose with this quilt, so I'll just kind of do it loosely, but I wanna make sure that my right angles are really square in the on the corners. So I'm gonna measure that, I'm gonna cut that, and then I'm gonna cut the batting a 1/2 inch smaller than the 2 fabric layers. Once those 2 cuts have been made, then I'm going to fold over the front fabric so it goes around the batting, and then the back fabric, wait, I can't show this one, I'm holding it anyways. I'm gonna fold the front fabric so the batting is like inside of it, and then fold the back fabric like this, and then stitch all the way around with a top stitch. So I'm gonna do that in a cream color because I know that's gonna show. And then everything else that needs to get done can happen by hand, which is great because we're leaving tomorrow and we have a long road trip ahead of us, so I'll have some stuff to do in the car. I took 109 pins to go all the way around, and it was almost exact because one short side and one long side was 55, and then the next short side and long side was 54. Do you care about that? I don't know. I think it's cool. But I'm maybe losing my mind right now. I am trying to get so much done before we leave tomorrow. I think it looks so good. I think it looks really, really pretty. It's like really clean around the edges. This is like definitely a rookie mistake. Like this is a lesson learned moment for me, but I did my quilting like all the way to the edges because I didn't know where I was gonna cut the quilt, and I should have cut it prior to doing that quilting because I had to seam rip all of the edges so that I had room to tuck the fabric underneath to make this little sandwich on the edges. Now I have to go back around every single one and like do some extra stitching to kind of lock it in place.
So that's annoying, but it's not gonna take too long. It's totally okay. So I'm gonna switch back to the invisible thread. I'm gonna do that, and then the next time I see you, we'll be in the car. Hi, hello. I don't know how I'm gonna film this in the car, but I really wanna get some sewing done. We are in the middle of our 14-hour plus road trip right now, so I am getting kind of bored. We're about halfway almost, and I want to be doing something. So I am going to try to film the next couple steps of this project. So that looks like embroidery, that looks like pulling the ends through of the quilting, and that means like appliquing the pocket down. And then once all of those pieces are done, the last thing I have to do is buy a dowel rod and cut it to size and put little screw eyes into it. And then give it to the baby, who's not here yet, by the way. Due date is, what day is it? Due date is in 6 days, so any minute now. Okay, let's see how this works.
Like super crunchy guitar, which then Korn would also become super famous for, I believe.
And that's good engineering, dude.
Yeah, brother, that's safety, dude.
The only step I managed to do in the car before the sun went down was to take each of the dangling threads from the quilting process, thread them onto a needle, and pull them through to the back, where I snipped all the ends off. This prevents any short thread tails from being on the front of the quilt.
Okay, hi. We are here. We made it to my in-laws. It's been a couple days, but the baby's here. She arrived this morning. Everything went well, so that's great. So I really need to finish this quilt because she's ready for it.
Before leaving town, I had used my machine to sew a long tube out of the backing fabric, which was about 3 inches in diameter and about 2 inches shorter than the width of the quilt. I used an applique stitch to attach it to the back of the quilt near but not at the top. And this will be the pocket for the hanging rod. The most important part of this is making sure that you don't stitch all the way to the front of the quilt. And now for a flashback. I really want to do a little bit of embroidery, either on the front or the back, I'm not sure, and a little like positive, sweet statement. I don't really know what I wanted to say though, so I'm gonna do a little bit of research and see if I can find something that inspires me. I looked up metamorphosis quotes and I just got quotes from the Kafka book. That's not what I wanted. Everyone is like a butterfly. They start out ugly and awkward and then morph into beautiful, graceful butterflies. I disagree. Sorry, Drew Barrymore. A lot of these quotes are really putting the butterfly as like the ultimate and the end. And I want to kind of honor the entire journey and also honor the fact that the journey is cyclical. Like I feel like every time I become a butterfly, I'm an egg again at some point. It's a spiral, it's not a line. I know you can't like see that in the quote, but I'd like the quote to at least embody that, you know? Butterflies are self-propelled flowers. It's a totally different vibe, but I love that. Or something like this. Just when the butterfly thought I am incapable of moving, it became a butterfly. Alright, that one's making me tear up. Maybe that one's the one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, 14. It's 14 words, but 2 of them are 1 letter and 2 of them are 2 letters. I don't know, you're gonna have to watch and find out because I don't know. Now let's go back to Christmas Eve in New Jersey. After getting some opinions from Josh and my mother-in-law Barb.
You could do it on this line right up
Here.
there, like a curve, go around the curve and you will fly. Yeah, that could be cool too. But I think somewhere in the vicinity of that butterfly, like above it.
With this color or with this color?
I like the orange.
I think I like the orange too.
The pops one.
Yeah, and it matches the butterfly. I sketched the words out with a pencil along a line of quilting above the butterfly. Although I loved the quote that I had found during my research, it was far too long, so I landed on the words, "You will fly."
It's just,
Okay, so the last piece is I got this dowel cut down to size. I measured how long I needed for the ends just to stick out. So I'm just screwing in these little screw eyes that I brought from home. I'm just screwing them in to the ends, and then that way they can put 2 little nails in the wall and the ends can just go right over the nails. I was worried I wouldn't be able to do this with my hands, but I can. At least it worked on the other side. There we go. Very important tool. Okay, and then I just want to make sure that they're even, so they're like kind of facing the same way. Like right now this one's facing like this, and if I just go like that, this one's facing about 90 degrees different. So just need to tighten this one a little bit. I think that's even enough. Okay, now I can give it to her.
Are you ready? Are you ready for the reveal? I love, love, love how this quilt turns out. It captures my vision perfectly, and I think it is an excellent counterpoint to her brother Austin's solar system quilt. Their dad, my brother-in-law Ian, said that it was striking to him that Austin's quilt contained every life that we know of, and Nora's quilt contains one, just more close up. And that's exactly the vibe I wanted the quilts to give. I hope that they both can look at these quilts as they grow and be invited to zoom way in or way out on this amazing existence that we share.
Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope you enjoyed watching along as that process unfolded. Not unlike a butterfly itself. To read this blog post and all of the others, you can head to my website, which is linked below. Also on my website and here on YouTube, I share everything that I like to do. I've got crafting stuff like this, and then also some of my own recipes, as well as Katrina's Great British Baking Project, where I'm baking along to all of the recipes from Great British Bake Off. So, you know. Also, if you want to join this Moonbelly family that we're building here together, there's 2 great ways to do that. The first is to find me on Instagram. There's behind the scenes stuff and little projects, including what I make for dinner almost every day. You can also sign up for the newsletter, which is a little bit more in depth, but I only do that once per month. I'm not gonna like spam your inbox or anything, and I'd really love it if you joined the newsletter because I'm really enjoying writing it, and people say that they love reading it. Either way, thank you so much again for being here, making it all the way to the end of this marathon of a project, and I can't wait to see you in another video soon. So many more projects coming out. Woo-hoo!
Oh, do you love it? Thank you for your support. Oh. Are you blessing the quilt? Oh, okay. Can you do that elsewhere?